Today, we're diving into the evolution of cyber conflict. We're going to trace how this battlefield grew from the basements of a few lone hackers into a global stage where superpowers face off. So how did we get here? Let's just start with this, a pretty stark warning. And the crazy thing is, this was from a report commissioned decades ago. Think about that. It perfectly captures this tension we all live with. Our technology gets more and more incredible, but our vulnerability grows right alongside it. The threat itself isn't new, but the scale, the speed, the sophistication, it's just accelerating like crazy.
So, where did this all begin? Well, before we had nation-states and digital armies, we just had individuals. The very first battles were fought by pioneers, pranksters, and phantoms. These lone hackers who saw the digital world as a new frontier, one that was ripe for exploring and sometimes for exploiting. Their stories are really the origin of everything that came after.
Take a guy like Kevin Mitnick, who was once the most wanted hacker on the planet. Now this quote, it might sound like he just wrote some brilliant complex code to get in. But that's not the story at all. This is actually the punchline. It's what he said after he simply tricked a colleague into letting him into a secure server room. He didn't break a digital lock, he just hawked his way past a person. And that right there, that tells you a fundamental truth about hacking that's as real today as it was then.
And that truth has a name: social engineering. You could call it the human hack. See, long before there were super sophisticated software exploits, attackers already knew that the weakest link in any security system is usually the person using it. It's all about playing on trust or curiosity or even fear. It proves that sometimes the easiest way to get a password is to just ask for it in the right way.
Okay, so social engineering gets you through the front door by tricking a person. But what about breaking down the technical walls? How do attackers actually manipulate the code and the networks that make our world run?
All right, let's pop the hood and really look inside the attacker's toolkit. We need to understand the mechanics of some of the most common and most powerful digital weapons they have. So one of the classic attacks, and one that is still shockingly effective, is called SQL injection. The simplest way to think about it is to imagine a website's login form. It's built to ask the database a really specific question, something like, hey, does a user named Bob with the password 1234 actually exist? Well, an SQL injection attack is all about hijacking that question.
And this is exactly how it can work. The attacker types in this tiny, weird-looking piece of text. What it does is it completely changes the question. Instead of asking, does this specific user exist, it twists the logic to ask, find me a user with no name, or just tell me if 1 equals 1. And well, 1 always equals 1, right? So the database says true, and can end up dumping the data for every single user it has. That's the power of a simple injection.
Of course, injection is just one tool in the toolbox. Attackers have a whole arsenal. For instance, a man-in-the-middle attack is basically like someone secretly tapping into your phone line and listening to everything. A denial-of-service attack is more of a brute force thing. They just flood a website with so much garbage traffic that it completely collapses. Each one of these targets a different weakness in the system. Now, these tools used to be pointed at, a single computer or maybe a small company network. But the battlefield has gotten so much bigger. Today, the targets aren't just servers anymore. They're entire corporations, whole economies, and yeah, even the fabric of society itself.
A huge turning point was Operation Aurora. This wasn't a quick smash and grab. This was a patient, incredibly sophisticated and coordinated espionage campaign. Its target? The intellectual property, the crown jewels of Google and dozens of other major American tech companies. The goal wasn't to break things, it was theft on a massive industrial scale. This really marked the beginning of a new era of corporate cyber warfare.
And the scale just kept climbing. Take Operation Shady Rat. When this was finally uncovered, investigators found that this single campaign had breached over 70 major organizations around the world. We are talking huge defense contractors, government agencies, even the United Nations. This proved these attacks weren't just one-offs. They were part of a sustained global campaign of digital spying.
And then, the stakes got even higher. The battlefield moved beyond just stealing data to threatening our physical world. As our power grids, our water systems, and all our infrastructure got connected to the internet, they also became incredibly vulnerable. This created what this quote calls a perfect storm, where a cyber attack could now literally flip a switch and turn out the lights for millions of people. And this massive escalation leads us right to where we are today. We're in a new era of cyber conflict where the most powerful players aren't individuals anymore, they're nation-states. This is a new kind of world war, and it's being fought with keyboards and fiber optic cables.
Just look at how fast things escalated on this timeline. In 2007, the entire country of Estonia was basically paralyzed by a digital blockade. Just 3 years after that, the Stuxnet worm proved that a piece of software could physically destroy hardware in the real world. Then, in 2013, the Snowden leaks revealed the sheer scale of government surveillance. And by 2015, that theoretical risk of a power grid attack became a devastating reality in Ukraine.
So it's really helpful to understand the different flavors of this conflict. You've got hacktivism, which is really about political protest. Then there's cyber espionage. That's your Operation Aurora, all about stealing secrets. But then you have cyber warfare, and that's the end game of this escalation. The goal there is to cause actual real-world damage, to shut down a city, cripple an economy, or take out a military target.
So what's fueling this new arms race? A huge part of it is this shadowy multi-million-dollar market for what they call zero-day exploits. Now, zero-day is a flaw in a piece of software that nobody knows about, not even the company that made it. Finding one is like discovering a secret master key that can unlock millions of doors. And this market creates a huge problem. Governments want to buy these keys to use for spying, while the rest of us desperately need those flaws to be found and fixed so we can all stay safe.
Okay, this is all a bit grim, I know. With this threat landscape just getting more and more intense, how do we possibly defend ourselves? Well, the big focus is shifting away from just reacting to attacks and toward proactively building systems that are just fundamentally more secure from the very start. A huge strategy here is called threat modeling. Basically, instead of waiting for a hacker to find a flaw in your system, you try to think like a hacker from day one. Before you even build anything, you ask questions like, okay, what are my most valuable assets here? Who would want to steal them, and how would they try to do it? By mapping out all the ways you could be attacked, you can build your defenses right into the blueprint.
And that proactive mindset leads to some really smart design principles. For example, fail securely is a simple idea. If your system breaks or has an error, it should default to a lockdown, safe state, not an open and vulnerable one. Another big one is the principle of least privilege. It's powerful but simple. Any program or user should only have the absolute minimum permissions they need to do their job and nothing more. That way, even if it gets compromised, the damage is contained.
But the challenge here is just immense. In our hyper-connected world, security isn't about building one big, impenetrable fortress anymore. An attacker could find a tiny weakness in a low-security system, like a public website, and use that as a jumping-off point to pivot and attack a much more critical internal system. Managing the security across all these interconnected zones is one of the hardest things defenders have to do.
Which really leaves us with this one big lingering question. In this constant global cat-and-mouse game, where the battlefield is invisible and the weapons are just lines of code, is the whole idea of perfect security just a fantasy? Maybe, but the ongoing struggle to design better defenses, to stay one step ahead, that's the struggle that's going to define the safety and the privacy of all of our futures.